Well, thank you very much, Richard, and I'll try and be as brisk as I can in my remarks. I first of all want to begin by congratulating you and the steering committee in putting together this conference. I think the event 2 years ago, though unfortunately in the end I couldn't get to it, raised a set of issues that are at the leading edge, not just of the LGBT agenda, but of the whole equality and human rights agenda. And I want to thank you for inviting me today. Now, I first want to say I'm very conscious that this is pretty precious airtime for you, as you've just stressed. You don't have to give it to just anybody, and it's a privilege to speak here. And I know for reasons that I'm going to come to later in my remarks, that the Commission overall, and I personally, have both, perhaps by commission and omission, failed to win the confidence of many in this community. So it was, if I can put it this way, something of an act of charity for you to offer me this platform to tell you how we see things, including where I feel we've got to and can do better in the future. The Commission, if it's going to be successful, has to find a way of engaging with the issues that you've been discussing today. We know we have got to learn, and we can do that both by listening and also by acting in concert with those who know. So though there are many things I could say today, I'm going to ask you to forgive me if I concentrate on a very few items, take up any issues that I omit in the Q&A. If I appear to avoid something important, it isn't because I don't know or haven't been briefed or just don't care. It's because I'm not here to lecture you or to try and dazzle you with my newfound knowledge. It's because I, too, as you say, Richard, want to begin a dialogue with people I respect. We're a new commission relative to the 30-year history of the CRE and the Equal Opportunities Commission. I could talk about some of the things we've done in the last 18 months at length. The 330 legal actions, 80% of them settled out of court or complied with, which is why you haven't heard about them. Landmark cases like the Sharon Coleman case gave new right to 6 million carers, or the Allen case, the Allen case, which created or forced the Royal Bank of Scotland, as if it didn't have enough trouble, to review all its disability access needs. £10 million worth in grants this year, 11 million next year, and so on. But I want to be specific about the subjects that you've been considering. I know that the LGBT communities warmly welcome the addition of sexual orientation and transgender identity to the equality mandate, and had high hopes and expectations for what we could achieve. Well, I saw the mission as twofold. First of all, to build on the transformational work of our predecessors in both protecting people who face discrimination and inequality, and also to step up the work of promoting equality of all kinds, including across the lines of class, by the way. We needed to extend the protection and promotional role to new lines of division: age, religion and belief, transgender status and identity, and of course, lesbian, gay and bisexual people. In particular, when it came to LGBT communities, my colleagues at the Commission have been, I think, incredibly perceptive in focusing on the issue of visibility for LGBT people. This is, of course, even stronger an issue today as we face recession. For many people, the best protection may seem to try to keep your head down, hide your identity, and survive. It's not right, but it's understandable. People shouldn't have to be heroes to be equal. It's our job to make it possible to be out, proud, and not face disadvantage at the same time. We have to find some new ways of achieving that end. But this new commission has a second, a newer, and more unfamiliar role, which is more tricky, more difficult. And that is to use our powers to define the boundary between legitimate expression of difference on the one hand, and legitimation of prejudice on the other. And where there appears to be a conflict, we need to throw our weight decisively in favour of the dictates of a true human rights culture. A Muslim family may well want to follow the traditions of arranged marriage, and we may all want to respect their rights to a Muslim identity. But in the end, there can be no ifs or buts. Whatever you think, whatever you feel, whatever tradition you come from, culture and heritage can never be a justification for taking away a woman's right to self-determination. And that includes by the subtle means of, for example, ostracizing her parents if she will not bend to the will of local religious leaders. And it also means, for example, that there can be no expansion of the rights of religious organizations to define their mission in such a way as to exclude lesbian and gay people either from their ministry or from their services. No way, no how. I have some personal experience of this, and I want to be honest with you about it because it's caused my own family some pain and it's influenced the way I think about these issues. My eldest niece is a lesbian. She has for some years, like most of my family, lived in the United States. She lives with another woman of whom some members of my family disapproved. For some people of my background, and I'm sure I don't need in this gathering to go into detail about this, my niece's sexuality is a mystery. For some, it is something worse. My niece and her partner are active Christians, like the rest of us. The greatest hurt of their lives was that for many years they could not find a church to accept them as a couple. I was reminded of this today when I attended communion for the child of a close friend in Essex. That's why, unfortunately, I couldn't be here this morning. I was in a congregation of some 300 people, and I was the only black person, somewhat like the experience of my parents' generation 50 years ago, when they found not only cold churches, but cold shoulders. Thus was born the Black Church movement. Few things are more painful than rejection by those whose faith should decree acceptance, a point I want to return to later, and I understand this all too well. The long and short of our family story was, of course, that as a family we had to make decisions about where, for example, we'd have funerals and weddings, and confronted with the choice between turning a blind eye to the attitudes of a pastor or leaving, going somewhere else. My late mother's pretty clear. She was in her 80s then. She said, we're a family, and any church that won't accept one of us won't have any of us. And interestingly, we're a very big family, and we tithe. Interestingly, it led to change in some attitudes. But that battle's not over. And I want to say this because I think people do change, and institutions change. The service that I attended this morning included the child of my friends, as I say, for her first communion. I'm not a Catholic, but I understand this is terribly important. She's a little girl who has Down's syndrome. In my day, she would have been made to be invisible. Other parents, we know, would have objected to her presence. Today, it's impossible to imagine that happening, just as it was strange for me to be in an all-white gathering now. But of course, this kind of change does not come without struggle and sometimes hurt. In our first 18 months, our conversations with LGBT people, more often than not, revolved around one issue and one person, the Reverend Joel Edwards. And I'm going to go off script here, and so forgive me if my words are not absolutely precise, because I think, well, I want to speak to you from myself. Joel Edwards' appointment was made by the government, by the Secretary of State, but made on my recommendation, amongst others. I chaired the panel, and with my support. So the first thing I'm going to do is not come to you and say, nothing to do with me. This is my work, as it were, to a large extent. Some of you have heard me say before that there are many reasons why Joel was appointed. He actually, any of you who have met him will know that he is in many ways an impressive person. He is also, and was, the senior black church leader in this country.